Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they betrayed you in the most intimate way possible? Maybe it was a doctor, a therapist, someone who promised confidentiality. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, because what happened to Vivian Laurent could happen to anyone, anywhere. The email arrived at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. Vivian had been reviewing spectroscopy reports for the antimicrobial compound she'd spent 3 years developing when her personal email chimed. She almost ignored it. Should have ignored it. But something about the subject line made her stomach drop before she'd even processed the words. Your recent medical documentation. Her hand trembled as she clicked. The message loaded slowly, her apartment's Wi-Fi sluggish as always. When the images finally appeared, the world tilted sideways. Those were her medical photos. From 3 weeks ago. Photos Dr. Harlow had insisted were standard documentation for her annual physical. Photos that showed far more than any legitimate medical record required. The message itself was brief. Clinical, almost. As if the sender were discussing something as mundane as a dental cleaning rather than a catastrophic violation of privacy. We need the synthesis protocols for compound S147. You will deliver the complete research files, including the proprietary catalyst formulas, within 72 hours. Instructions will follow. If you contact authorities or your employer, these images will be distributed to your entire professional network, beginning with the Pharmaceutical Ethics Board reviewing your promotion application. Noncompliance will result in immediate distribution. We know you understand what's at stake. Vivian's lungs refused to work properly. She stared at the screen until her vision blurred, until the words stopped making sense, until the only thing she could process was the sick understanding that someone had been planning this. The appointment hadn't been random. Dr. Harlow hadn't been careless or inappropriate. This had been deliberate from the start. She was a pharmaceutical researcher at Meridian Biotech, one of the top 3 companies in antimicrobial development. She had access to formulas worth millions. Billions, potentially, if compound S147 performed as projected in human trials. And someone knew that. Someone had targeted her specifically. Her phone was in her hand before she remembered picking it up. Grace answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. Viv, it's almost midnight. What's wrong? Vivian tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. The words came out broken, disjointed, but Grace understood enough. 20 minutes later, her best friend was at the door in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, her dark curls pulled into a messy bun. Show me, Grace said. They sat together on Vivian's worn couch, the laptop between them casting harsh light across their faces. Grace's expression progressed through shock, fury, and finally a cold determination that Vivian envied. She wanted to feel angry. Instead, she felt hollow, exposed, like the violation was still happening, would keep happening, every time someone saw those images. We go to the police, Grace said firmly. Right now? This is blackmail. It's a legal medical practice. That doctor should be in prison. Vivian shook her head slowly. I can't. My career, Grace. I'm up for senior researcher. The ethics board is already reviewing my file. If this gets out, even as a victim, the scandal alone could destroy everything I've worked for. Then we go to your company's security. They have protocols for this kind of thing. And tell them what? That I'm being blackmailed for research protocols? They'll assume I'm already compromised. Corporate espionage cases always destroy the target's career, even when they're innocent. I've seen it happen. Grace grabbed her hands, squeezed hard. So what? You just give them the research? Viv, you know what happens to pharmaceutical formulas on the black market. These people aren't going to use your compound to cure infections. They're going to manufacture knockoffs, cut corners, hurt people. Your work could end up killing someone. The words hit like a physical blow because Grace was right. Vivian had dedicated her career to developing medications that would help people, particularly in underserved communities where antibiotic resistance was becoming a crisis. The thought of her research being perverted, turned into contaminated drugs that could cause organ failure or death, made her want to vomit. But the alternative was having those photos sent to everyone she'd ever worked with. Everyone in her field. Her colleagues would see them. The ethics board would see them. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, her mentor and the woman who'd championed her for promotion, would see them. I don't know what to do, Vivian whispered. Grace stayed until 3 in the morning, finally leaving only when Vivian promised she wouldn't make any decisions without talking to her first. After the door closed, Vivian sat in the dark of her living room and thought about the paths that had led her here. Her grandmother had worked 2 jobs to put her through college after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Vivian had been brilliant even then, driven by a desperate need to prove that sacrifice hadn't been wasted. Full scholarship to MIT, graduate work at Stanford, position at Meridian by 26. Every achievement a tribute to the woman who'd given up her retirement, her health, her own dreams so Vivian could have a future. And now that future hung by a thread, dependent on the whims of criminals who thought nothing of destroying her. She opened her laptop again, hating herself for it, but unable to stop. The sender's email address was clearly fake, a string of random numbers and letters. Untraceable, but the photos themselves had metadata. She pulled up the properties, hope flickering briefly before dying. Scrubbed clean. Whoever had sent them knew what they were doing. Dr. Harlow's medical practice was in a modern office building downtown, the kind of place that screamed legitimate professional. Vivian had found him through her insurance provider's directory. His credentials had checked out. Board certified in internal medicine, 15 years of practice, decent reviews online. She started digging deeper, following links she'd never thought to check before. The practice had only been at that location for 8 months. Before that, Dr. Harlow had worked at a clinic in a different state. Before that, another state. Nothing suspicious on its own. Doctors moved, but the pattern felt wrong somehow, like someone staying ahead of consequences. One review, buried 6 pages deep, made her blood run cold. Dr. Harlow insisted on extensive photographic documentation for a routine visit. Made me uncomfortable, but he said it was standard now. Later found out it's not standard. Reported to medical board, but he'd already left the state. 1 star, posted 14 months ago. How many others? How many women had he done this to? The second email arrived at 6:33 the next morning. Vivian hadn't slept. She'd spent the night researching, spiraling through forums about medical privacy violations and blackmail cases, finding nothing that gave her hope. Every legal avenue led back to exposure. Every protective measure came too late. The new message contained no images this time, just an address and a time. 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone. Bring nothing except the research files on an encrypted drive. Any deviation results in immediate distribution of your photos, beginning with your employer. This was real. This was happening. In less than 14 hours, she would have to choose between her career and her integrity, between protecting herself and protecting potentially thousands of people who would never know her research had been stolen. Vivian called in sick to work, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. She spent the day in her apartment, pacing, thinking, trying to find an angle that didn't exist. Grace texted every hour. Are you okay? Have you decided? Please don't do anything without calling me first. By evening, Vivian's hands had stopped shaking. The fear had crystallized into something colder, harder. She wasn't going to that meeting. She wasn't giving them the research. But she also wasn't going to the police or her company. Not yet. There had to be another way. Someone who could help without destroying her in the process. Someone who operated outside the normal channels, who understood how to fight threats that law enforcement couldn't or wouldn't handle. The thought scared her almost as much as the blackmail itself. But as she looked at those photos one more time before deleting the email, Vivian felt something shift inside her. She'd spent her whole life being good, being careful, playing by rules that had just been used to victimize her. Maybe it was time to break a few rules of her own. She grabbed her jacket and keys, checking her phone one last time before heading out. Grace had sent another message. Call me. I'm worried. Vivian texted back quickly. I'm fine. Just need to clear my head. Going for a drive. It was a lie. She was going to her office to print files that might help her identify who was behind this, what connections they might have, whether there were other targets at Meridian. She'd use the weekend security access, when fewer people would notice. Gather information. Build a case. Figure out her next move. The parking garage at Meridian was mostly empty at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. Vivian's footsteps echoed off concrete as she walked toward the elevator bank, files tucked under her arm. She'd been careful, only printing what could be explained as work she was taking home. Nothing that would raise flags if anyone checked the logs. The awareness came gradually, a prickling at the back of her neck. the sense of being watched. She stopped walking, listening. The garage was quiet except for the distant hum of ventilation systems. But something felt wrong. She turned slowly, scanning the rows of cars, the dark corners between support pillars. A figure moved in her peripheral vision. Vivian's heart slammed against her ribs. She walked faster toward her car, keys gripped between her fingers the way the self-defense article had recommended. The footsteps behind her matched her pace. Not trying to hide anymore, she broke into a run. Her car was 3 rows away, impossibly far. The footsteps behind her sped up. She could hear breathing now, heavy and determined. Her fingers fumbled with the key fob, the panic button, anything. The hand that grabbed her shoulder spun her around with enough force to send her files scattering across the concrete. Vivian found herself staring at a man she'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that might have been handsome if not for the cold calculation in his eyes. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression she'd ever seen. Time to make a decision, Dr. Laurent. My employers are getting impatient. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I don't know what you're talking about. His smile widened. Yes, you do. And you're running out of time to cooperate. We can make this very unpleasant for you. Or, he stepped closer, crowding her against a concrete pillar. You can be smart. Give us what we want. Your secret stays safe. Everyone wins. Vivian's mind raced through options. Scream. Run. Fight. None of them ended well. This man had found her at work. Knew her schedule. Had probably been watching her for days, maybe weeks. I need more time, she said finally. You have until tomorrow night. After that, his hand came up, finger tracing down her cheek in a gesture that made her skin crawl. We start distributing 1 photo an hour to everyone in your contact list. Think about it. He stepped back, melting into the shadows between cars. Within seconds, he'd vanished, leaving Vivian alone with her scattered files and the terrible understanding that this was so much worse than she'd realized. These people knew where she worked, where she parked, probably where she lived. There was nowhere safe anymore. Vivian didn't remember driving home. One moment she was gathering her scattered files from the garage floor with shaking hands. The next, she was sitting in her apartment parking lot with no memory of the route she'd taken. Autopilot. Shock. Whatever it was, it terrified her almost as much as that man's cold smile. She made it inside, locked every lock, checked every window. Not that it mattered. They knew where she lived, knew where she worked, knew everything about her while she knew nothing about them. Sleep was impossible. She sat on her couch until dawn, jumping at every sound, her mind cycling through the same impossible equations. Give them the research and betray everything she believed in. Refuse and watch her career, her reputation, her entire life burn down around her. There was no third option, no clever solution that saved everyone. By morning, she'd made a decision. She was going to the meeting, not to give them the research, but to see who she was dealing with, to understand the threat, maybe find leverage of her own. It was a terrible plan. Grace would call it suicidal. But Vivian was out of good options. The day crawled past. She went to work because not going would raise questions, spent 8 hours pretending everything was normal while her thoughts spiraled in endless circles. Her colleague Marcus asked if she was feeling better. She managed something resembling a smile, said she was fine, just a stomach bug. The lie felt like every other lie she'd told in the past 48 hours. Necessary. Corrosive. By the time evening came, Vivian had talked herself into and out of her plans 17 times. She sat in her car outside her apartment building at 7:30, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to find courage she didn't feel. Her phone buzzed. Grace, of course. Are you home? Want me to come over? Vivian typed back quickly. At the grocery store. Home soon. Talk later? Another lie. She was drowning in them. The address from the email led to an industrial area on the outskirts of the city, the kind of neighborhood that looked abandoned even in daylight. At night, it felt apocalyptic. Streetlights flickered and died at random intervals. Buildings stood empty, windows broken, graffiti covering every available surface. Vivian parked where the message had instructed, in a lot behind what used to be a warehouse. Her hands trembled as she turned off the engine. This was insane. She should call the police. Call Grace. Call someone. But the memory of that man's smile, the casual certainty that he could destroy her, kept her frozen. She got out of the car slowly, scanning the darkness. Nothing moved. The wind carried the smell of rust and decay, the city's industrial bones rotting in the dark. The sound of footsteps made her turn. 3 men emerged from the shadows. Not the one from the parking garage, but his friends clearly. They moved with the same predatory confidence, spreading out to surround her. The tallest one, with a scar running through his left eyebrow, smiled with too many teeth. Dr. Laurent, so glad you could make it. Do you have our files? Vivian's voice surprised her by working. I need more time. This isn't something I can just walk out with. There are security protocols, monitoring systems. If I access those files wrong, it triggers alerts. The scarred man's smile faded. Our message was clear. 72 hours. You've had 72 hours. I need a week. Maybe 2. To do this without getting caught, without raising suspicion. He stepped closer, and Vivian forced herself not to retreat. We're not interested in your timeline, he said softly. We're interested in results. And cooperation. His hand moved toward her, and Vivian's body made the decision her mind couldn't. She stepped back fast, hands coming up defensively. The man laughed. Feisty. I like that. But you need to understand something. We own you now. Your body, your career, your future. All of it belongs to us until you deliver what we want. Terror crystallized into fury so sudden it shocked her. You don't own anything. I'm not giving you my research. Find someone else to exploit. The words were out before she could stop them. Brave and stupid and utterly reckless. The man's expression went cold. Wrong answer. He moved fast, grabbing her arm with bruising force. Vivian fought instinctively, twisting, trying to break free. One of the other men closed in from behind. She was outmatched, outnumbered, and nobody knew where she was. This was how she was going to die. In an abandoned lot, fighting men who saw her as nothing but a resource to exploit. Then everything changed. The man holding her made a choked sound and simply let go, staggering backward. Vivian caught a glimpse of movement, impossibly fast, and suddenly there was someone between her and her attackers. Someone tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that looked absurdly out of place in this decaying lot. The new arrival didn't speak, didn't hesitate. He moved like violence was a language he'd been born speaking, every motion precise and devastating. The scarred man swung at him and ended up on the ground, clutching his ribs. The second attacker pulled something from his jacket, probably a weapon, but never got the chance to use it. Within seconds, all 3 of her stalkers were on the ground, groaning or unconscious. The stranger turned to face her, and Vivian's breath caught. He was probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair styled with casual perfection and olive skin that suggested Mediterranean heritage. His eyes were an unusual gray-green, intense and assessing in a way that made her feel simultaneously exposed and protected. His suit was definitely expensive, the kind of tailored precision that cost more than her monthly rent. And he was looking at her like he'd been searching for her specifically. We need to go, he said calmly, as if he hadn't just taken down 3 men in under a minute. My car is across the street. Vivian found her voice, though it came out shakier than she wanted. Who are you? Someone who can help you. But not here, not now. Those men will wake up or call for backup, and you don't want to be here when that happens. He started walking, clearly expecting her to follow. Vivian's feet moved before her brain caught up, some survival instinct recognizing that this stranger was less dangerous than the alternative. His car was a black sedan, sleek and expensive, parked in the shadows where she hadn't noticed it before. He opened the passenger door, waited until she got in, then moved around to the driver's side with athletic grace. The interior smelled like leather and cologne, clean and masculine. He started the engine and pulled away from the lot without urgency, like they were leaving a restaurant rather than a crime scene. Vivian finally found her coherent thoughts. Who are you? What do you want? My name is Dante Moretti, and I want the same thing you want. To stop the people who've been blackmailing you. Her heart slammed against her ribs. How do you know about that? He glanced at her, those unusual eyes unreadable in the dashboard light. I've been tracking the Kozlov organization for 6 months. They're Russian mob, cutting into pharmaceutical supply chains, manufacturing counterfeit medications, blackmailing researchers and doctors for legitimate formulas. Dr. Harlow is one of their assets. You're not his first victim. You won't be his last unless someone stops him. The information hit her in waves. Russian mob. Multiple victims. This was so much bigger than she'd realized. And this man, Dante Moretti, knew all of it. Why do you care? She asked. Are you law enforcement? His mouth quirked in something that might have been amusement. No, I'm not law enforcement. Then what are you? Someone whose business interests are threatened by the Kozlov operation. They're flooding the market with contaminated pharmaceuticals, undercutting legitimate suppliers, hurting people. That affects me. The careful phrasing told her everything. He was a criminal. Maybe not the same kind as the men who'd attacked her, but someone who operated outside the law nonetheless. She should be terrified. Should demand he let her out of the car. Instead, she asked, "What do you want from me?" Dante pulled into an underground parking garage, the entrance so discreet she almost missed it. He parked in a private spot near the elevator and turned to face her fully. I want you to help me bring down the Kozlov operation. You have access to information about Dr. Harlow's other victims, about the pharmaceutical formulas they're targeting, about their distribution network. With your help, I can expose them completely. And what do I get? He held her gaze steadily. Every copy of your photos destroyed. Every person involved in blackmailing you eliminated as a threat. Your career and reputation protected. And safety. Real safety. Not just until the next demand comes. It sounded too good to be true. It probably was. But Vivian was desperate enough to listen. What's the catch? You work with me. You trust me. And you accept that the methods I use aren't always legal. She wanted to say no. Wanted to insist there had to be another way. But 48 hours of terror and helplessness had taught her something about the limits of legal protection. The police can't help you, Dante continued, reading her hesitation. Even if they believed you, even if they wanted to help, the Kozlovs have connections. Evidence would disappear. Witnesses would recant. And you'd be left exactly where you are now, except everyone would know about the photos. Have you ever had to choose between two impossible options? Vivian thought about Grace's advice, about her grandmother's sacrifices, about the career she'd built from nothing. Let me know in the comments what you would do. Why should I trust you? She asked quietly. You're admitting you're a criminal. Dante's expression softened slightly, the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him. Because I'm offering you a choice. The Kozlovs aren't. They see you as a tool. I see you as a person who deserves to have her life back. Work with me, and I promise you'll be safe. Fight me, and you're on your own against people who will destroy you without hesitation. The terrible thing was, he made sense. More sense than anything had in days. What happens now? She asked. Now, I take you somewhere safe. My penthouse. I have security, resources, everything you need while we figure this out. Tomorrow, we start gathering information. I can't just disappear. I have work, responsibilities. Call in sick for a few days. Tell your friend, Grace, you need space. Whatever you need to say to buy time. Once we've neutralized the immediate threat, you can go back to your normal life. Normal life. The phrase felt like a relic from another era, something that had existed before that first email. Dante was watching her, patient but alert, waiting for her decision. The elevator behind him probably led to his penthouse, to a world she knew nothing about, controlled by a man who'd just admitted to being a criminal. But he'd also saved her life, offered her a way out when she had none. And something about his intensity, the way he looked at her not like a victim, but like someone capable of fighting back, made her feel less helpless than she had in days. Vivian took a breath. Okay, I'll do it. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction. He got out of the car and came around to open her door, a surprisingly old-fashioned gesture. She accepted his offered hand, felt the warmth and strength of his grip, and followed him to the elevator. The ride up was silent. Vivian studied him covertly in the elevator's mirrored walls. He stood with absolute stillness, the kind of calm that came from complete confidence in his ability to handle whatever came next. His suit fit him perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean, athletic build. He was handsome in a way that felt dangerous, all sharp angles and controlled power. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow. Questions? Dozens. But the one that came out was, how did you know I'd be there tonight? I've had people watching the Kozlovs watching you. When they sent the meeting location, I knew you'd either go to try to understand what you were facing or stay away and hope they'd give you more time. You struck me as someone brave enough to try the first option. I'm not brave. I'm desperate. Sometimes those are the same thing. The elevator opened into a private foyer, then into the penthouse itself. Vivian stepped inside and tried not to gape. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights. The furniture was modern and clearly expensive, all clean lines and quality materials. Art that was probably original hung on the walls. This was the kind of space she'd only seen in magazines. Guest room is down that hall, Dante said, nodding to the left. Bathrooms attached. You'll find everything you need. Tomorrow we'll talk strategy. Just like that? You're not going to lock me in or guard the door. You're not a prisoner, Vivian. You're a partner in this. You can leave any time you want. He paused, those gray-green eyes serious. But I hope you won't. Because if you go back out there alone, the Kozlovs will find you. And next time, I might not be there to stop them. The words should have sounded like a threat. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Like someone who genuinely cared whether she survived this. Vivian nodded slowly. Thank you. For tonight. For offering to help. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get complicated before it gets better. He showed her to the guest room, pointed out towels and toiletries, then left her alone. Vivian sat on the edge of the massive bed, her mind struggling to process everything that had happened in the past hour. She'd gone to that lot expecting confrontation, possibly death. Instead, she'd been rescued by a man who was probably as dangerous as the people threatening her, just aimed in a different direction. She'd agreed to work with a criminal to take down other criminals. She was staying in a penthouse that cost more than she'd make in a decade. Her phone buzzed. Grace again. Viv, you're scaring me. Please call. Vivian typed back carefully. I'm okay. Just need a few days to figure things out. I'll explain soon, I promise. Another lie. But this one felt different. Like maybe, possibly, it was buying time for something other than disaster. She looked around the guest room, with its expensive linens and carefully chosen artwork. Thought about Dante Moretti in the other room, the man who'd taken down 3 attackers without breaking a sweat, who'd offered her protection and revenge in the same breath. She should be terrified, should be planning her escape. Instead, for the first time in days, Vivian felt something other than helpless. It wasn't safety exactly. It was possibility. The sense that maybe she wasn't completely alone in this nightmare. That maybe, somehow, she'd survive. Vivian woke to unfamiliar silence. No traffic noise from the street below, no neighbors moving around in adjacent apartments. Just quiet, broken only by distant sounds from somewhere else in the penthouse. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The blackmail. The attack. Dante Moretti and his impossible offer. She sat up slowly, taking in the guest room in morning light. Everything was tasteful and expensive, from the Egyptian cotton sheets to the abstract painting on the wall. The kind of space that had been designed by professionals, lived in by someone who had money but not necessarily warmth. Her phone showed 7:30. She'd somehow slept 6 hours, exhaustion finally overwhelming anxiety. Grace had sent 3 more messages, each more worried than the last. Vivian texted back quickly. I'm safe. Taking a few personal days. We'll explain everything soon, I promise. Not a lie this time. Not exactly. She found clothes in her overnight bag, showered in the marble bathroom that was bigger than her bedroom at home, and emerged feeling almost human. The smell of coffee drew her toward the kitchen. Dante stood at the stove, cooking eggs with the kind of casual competence that suggested he did this regularly. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark jeans and a gray Henley that emphasized his athletic build. Seeing him in daylight, in this domestic context, should have made him less intimidating. Somehow it didn't. He glanced over his shoulder as she entered. Good morning. Coffee's ready. How do you take your eggs? The normalcy of the question threw her. Scrambled? He nodded and returned his attention to the pan. There was something mesmerizing about watching him cook, the efficient movements, the care he took with something as simple as breakfast. This was a man who'd beaten 3 people unconscious last night, and here he was making sure the eggs didn't burn. Vivian poured coffee, added cream, and sat at the kitchen island. She should say something. Ask about the plan. Discuss strategy. Instead, she found herself asking, do you always cook breakfast for people you rescue? Only the interesting ones, he replied without looking at her. His tone suggested he might be joking, but she couldn't quite tell. He plated the eggs along with toast and fruit, set everything in front of her with surprising grace, then made his own plate and sat across from her. For a few minutes, they ate in comfortable silence. The food was good, Better than good. It made her apartment's freezer meals seem even more depressing than usual. We need to discuss your routine, Dante said finally. Your normal schedule, who you interact with, what access you have at work. I should go to work today? Being absent raises questions. Agreed. But you'll have protection. Nico will shadow you. As if summoned, a man appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was younger than Dante, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Those eyes were watchful, cataloging everything. This is Nico, Dante said. My second. He'll make sure the Kozlovs don't try anything while you're exposed. Nico nodded at her. Dr. Laurent. I'll stay out of sight, but I'll be close. Anyone approaches you who seems off, you let me know immediately. The reality of what she'd agreed to settled over Vivian like a weight. She was going to work with a bodyguard, going back to her normal life while nothing was normal anymore. What about tonight? She asked. Do I come back here? Dante's expression was unreadable. For now, yes. Until we neutralize the immediate threat, staying here is safest. Your apartment isn't secure. How long will that take? As long as necessary. Could be days. Could be weeks. Weeks. Living here, in this penthouse, with this dangerous man who cooked breakfast and looked at her with an intensity that made her skin feel too warm. Okay, she said quietly. Whatever it takes. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Approval, maybe. Or respect. He stood, collected their plates. Go to work. Act normal. If you notice anything suspicious, anyone asking unusual questions, you tell Nico immediately. Tonight, we'll review what you learned and plan our next move. The drive to Meridian felt surreal with Nico following 2 cars behind. Vivian kept checking her mirrors, half expecting to see Kozlov's men instead. But Nico was professional, almost invisible when she glanced back. Work was harder than she'd anticipated. Everyone asked where she'd been, if she was feeling better. Vivian smiled and lied and tried to focus on her research. But now that Dante had opened her eyes to the possibility of infiltration, she saw potential threats everywhere. Marcus from the neighboring lab stopped by twice, asking questions about her antimicrobial compound that seemed more pointed than usual. How close are you to human trials? Have you solved the catalyst stability problem? What about the synthesis protocols? The questions made her skin crawl. Marcus had always been friendly but competitive, eager to know what other teams were working on. She'd thought it was normal professional curiosity. Now she wondered if it was something darker. At lunch, she texted Nico. Colleague asking detailed questions about my research. Is that normal or suspicious? His reply came instantly. Name and description. She provided them, feeling paranoid but unable to shake the unease. When she returned to her lab, Marcus was gone. She didn't see him again for the rest of the day. By evening, Vivian's nerves were shot. Every interaction felt loaded with potential danger. Every question might be innocent or might be reconnaissance. The paranoia was exhausting. Nico drove her back to the penthouse, not speaking, but somehow reassuring in his steady presence. Dante was waiting when she arrived, already changed into comfortable clothes, his hair slightly damp like he'd recently showered. Tell me about your day, he said simply. They sat in his living room, the city lights spreading below them, and Vivian described everything. The questions from Marcus. The way her supervisor had seemed distracted, stressed about something he wouldn't discuss. The feeling of being watched even with Nico nearby. Dante listened without interrupting, his focus absolute. When she finished, he pulled out a laptop. Let me show you something. The screen filled with surveillance footage from Meridian's lobby, timestamped from 3 weeks ago. Vivian watched herself enter the building, noticed nothing unusual. Then Dante pointed to a figure in the background. That's Marcus. Watch what he does after you pass. Marcus pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then made a call. The body language suggested urgency. He's reporting your arrival, Dante said quietly. He does it every morning you come to work. Someone's paying him to track you. The betrayal hit harder than she expected. Marcus had seemed like a friend. They'd had coffee together, complained about grant funding, celebrated each other's successes. And the whole time, he'd been selling information about her. Who's paying him? She asked. We're working on that. But the pattern suggests Kozlov organization. They've been setting this up for months, Vivian. The doctor's appointment was just one piece. They've had eyes on you at work, mapped your routine, identified your vulnerabilities. The scope of it was overwhelming. She'd thought the blackmail was opportunistic, a terrible coincidence. Instead, it had been planned with precision. How many others? She asked. How many people has Dr. Harlow done this to? Dante's expression darkened. At least 12 that we've identified. Pharmaceutical researchers, medical examiners, lab technicians. Anyone with access to controlled substances or proprietary formulas. Most of them gave the Kozlovs what they wanted rather than risk exposure. And the ones who didn't? One committed suicide. 2 lost their careers anyway when the photos were distributed. 3 disappeared, probably relocated and changed their names. The Kozlovs don't lose gracefully. Vivian felt sick. She could have been any of them. Could still become any of them if this went wrong. Why are you really helping me? She asked. You said it affects your business interests, but there's more to it. I can tell. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the windows, the city beyond. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. My mother died when I was 16. Contaminated prescription medication. The pharmacy had been buying knockoff antibiotics from an illegal manufacturer, cutting corners to increase profits. The infection she was treating became septic because the medication was worthless. By the time anyone realized, it was too late. The pain in his words was old, but not healed. Vivian understood that kind of grief, the way loss carved permanent holes in your life. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked at her. That's why I care about pharmaceutical corruption. It's not just about territory or profit. People die when counterfeit medications flood the market. Your research, if the Kozlovs get it, will be turned into contaminated drugs that kill people who are desperate and trusting. I can't stop that by being legitimate. But I can stop it my way. The honesty was unexpected. Vivian had thought he'd be all cold calculation, but there was genuine conviction in his voice. He'd lost someone. She'd lost someone. They both understood what that kind of pain felt like. My parents died when I was 12, she heard herself say. Car accident. My grandmother raised me after that. She worked 2 jobs so I could go to college, gave up everything for me. That's why my career matters so much. It's not just about me. It's about proving her sacrifice meant something. Dante's expression softened. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She is. She's in assisted living now, early dementia. Some days she remembers me. Some days she doesn't. But I visit every week and tell her about my research, and sometimes she smiles like she understands. The words came easier than she expected. Maybe because he'd shared his own loss first. Maybe because something about him invited honesty. They talked for hours after that. About families and sacrifices and the things that drove them. Vivian learned that Dante had taken over his family's business at 22 when his father had a stroke, that he'd been responsible for dozens of employees and complex operations when most people his age were still figuring out their careers. He'd learned quickly that legitimate business and underground operations often intersected, and he'd chosen to work both sides of that line with a strict code. He didn't traffic in drugs or weapons, didn't exploit people who couldn't fight back, but he protected his territory and his people with whatever force necessary. It should have scared her. Instead, she found herself understanding the complexity of it. The world wasn't as simple as legal versus illegal. Sometimes the people who operated in shadows did more good than those who claimed moral authority. You should stay here, Dante said eventually. Not just tonight. Until this is over. Your apartment isn't safe, and I need to know you're protected. The suggestion should have felt like imprisonment. Instead, it felt like relief. Here, in this space, with Nico outside and Dante nearby, she didn't have to be constantly vigilant. Didn't have to wonder if every sound was a threat. Okay, she agreed. Something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, but also something warmer. He stood, offered his hand to help her up from the couch. The touch of his palm against hers sent unexpected awareness through her. He was warm, his grip strong but careful. She found herself noticing details she'd been too terrified to register before. The way his shoulders filled out his shirt, the precise line of his jaw, the unusual color of his eyes, gray-green like the ocean before a storm. He held her hand a moment longer than necessary, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that might have been accidental but felt deliberate. Get some rest, he said quietly. Tomorrow we start gathering evidence against the Kozlovs. It's going to get intense. Vivian nodded, not quite trusting her voice. She was halfway to her room when the weight of everything finally broke through her defenses. The fear, the violation, The last few days of constant terror. She stopped in the hallway, one hand braced against the wall, and started crying. She heard Dante behind her, felt his presence before his hand touched her shoulder. "Vivian," he said softly. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I'm fine. I just need a minute." "You're not fine. And you don't have to be." His arms came around her carefully, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. Instead, she turned into the embrace, pressing her face against his chest as tears she'd been holding back for days finally broke free. He held her through it, one hand stroking her hair with surprising gentleness, the other strong and steady against her back. "They destroyed something," she whispered into his shirt. "Those photos. The violation. Even if we stop them, even if we get every copy, I'll always know it happened. That someone looked at me like that. Used me like that. I know," Dante said quietly. "And I can't undo what they did. But I can make sure they never do it to anyone else. And I can make sure you're safe. That's something." His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear. His cologne smelled like cedar and something darker, more complex. Being held by him felt safer than anything had in days, and that terrified her almost as much as the blackmail. Because Dante Moretti was dangerous, was a criminal, was someone she barely knew. And yet, standing there in his arms, Vivian felt protected in a way she'd never experienced before. Like maybe, possibly, she'd found someone who would fight for her when no one else could. 3 days of careful routine. Vivian went to work with Nico shadowing her movements, returned to the penthouse each evening to review evidence with Dante, and tried to pretend this temporary arrangement didn't feel increasingly permanent. They were building a case, documenting the Kozlov organization's pharmaceutical theft operation, identifying other victims. Progress was slow but steady. Then everything went wrong. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Vivian was leaving Meridian through the side entrance, the route she and Nico had agreed provided the best sight lines. She saw him across the parking lot, positioned where he could intercept any approach. Everything felt secure. The van came from nowhere. It pulled up beside her with screeching tires, side door already open. 2 men lunged out, grabbing for her with practiced efficiency. Vivian screamed, fought, tried to remember the self-defense moves Grace had made her learn years ago. Her bag fell, keys scattering across pavement. One man had her arm, twisting it painfully behind her back. The other was reaching for her legs, trying to lift her into the van. This was it. They were taking her. Once she was in that vehicle, she'd disappear into whatever nightmare the Kozlovs had planned. Then Nico was there, moving like lightning. He slammed into the first man with enough force to send them both sprawling. The second man released Vivian to face this new threat, and suddenly there were more bodies converging, more of Dante's people materializing from positions she hadn't known they occupied. The fight was brutal and efficient. Within 90 seconds, both attackers were subdued, the van's driver had fled, and Vivian was standing in the middle of organized chaos, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Nico's face was grim as he guided her toward his car. "We need to move. Now. Where's Dante?" "Already on his way. He's not happy." That was an understatement. When they arrived at the penthouse, Dante was pacing the living room like a caged predator. The moment he saw her, something dangerous flashed across his face, fury and relief mixing into an intensity that made her breath catch. He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands coming up to frame her face, eyes scanning for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "No." Nico stopped them. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." His voice was rough, barely controlled. "You're shaking. And you could have been in that van, on your way to somewhere I couldn't reach you. But I'm not. I'm here. Because Nico is good at his job. Because we got lucky." His hands tightened slightly against her jaw. Not painful, but possessive. "You're not going back to that building. We handle this differently now." Vivian felt her own anger rising to meet his. "I have a job, Dante. A career. I can't just disappear. Your career won't matter if you're dead. So what? I hide here forever? Let them control my entire life?" They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the adrenaline and fear transmuting into something more volatile. Nico cleared his throat quietly and vanished down the hallway, leaving them alone in their standoff. "I'm not trying to control you," Dante said finally, his voice dropping to something quieter but no less intense. "I'm trying to keep you alive. Do you understand what would have happened if they'd gotten you into that van?" She did understand. That's why she was shaking. why her body felt like it might vibrate apart from the delayed terror. But she also understood that letting fear make her choices meant they'd already won. I can't stop living, she said quietly. That's what they want. To make me so scared I can't function. Something shifted in Dante's expression. His hands gentled against her face, thumbs stroking across her cheekbones. You're right. I'm sorry. He stopped, struggled with something. When Nico called and said they tried to take you, I couldn't breathe. The thought of losing you. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Vivian saw it in his eyes, the depth of feeling he was trying to contain. This had stopped being just about protection somewhere along the way. For both of them. What if I work from here? She offered. I can access most of my files remotely. That way I'm still productive, but not exposed. His relief was visible. That could work. And you help me with the investigation. You understand the pharmaceutical side better than anyone on my team. Partners? Partners. The word felt weighted with meanings neither of them were ready to examine. But Vivian nodded, and Dante's hands finally dropped from her face, leaving her skin feeling cool where his warmth had been. They fell into a new routine over the following days. Vivian set up a workspace in Dante's study, video conferencing with her team at Meridian, reviewing research from the safety of the penthouse. In the evenings, she and Dante worked together, going through evidence of the Kozlov operation, building connections between Dr. Harlow's victims and the pharmaceutical theft. The proximity was constant now. Dante would bring her coffee without asking, exactly how she liked it. She'd order dinner that included his preferences without thinking. He'd drape his jacket over her shoulders when the air conditioning made her shiver. She'd put her hand on his arm when explaining something technical, and neither of them would mention how long the touch lasted. The awareness between them grew like a living thing. Vivian found herself noticing everything about him. The way he rolled up his sleeves when he was working, exposing strong forearms. How his hair fell across his forehead when he was concentrating. The rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. The way he listened to her like every word mattered. And she caught him watching her. Saw his eyes track her movements across a room. Noticed how he'd positioned himself between her and any door, that protective instinct always present. The way his jaw would tighten when she bit her lip while thinking. It was inevitable, really. They both knew it. The question was just when. 2 weeks after the attempted kidnapping, they were working late in the living room, wine glasses beside their laptops, reviewing financial records that traced pharmaceutical supply chains. Vivian's eyes were burning from staring at spreadsheets, and Dante looked equally exhausted. We should call it a night, he said, rubbing his face. We're not going to find anything new at midnight. Probably not. But Vivian didn't move to close her laptop. Didn't want this moment to end. The comfortable quiet of working beside him, the city lights below them, the sense of partnership that had become more valuable than she'd expected. Dante was watching her with that intensity she'd come to recognize, the look that said he was thinking things he wouldn't say aloud. The air between them felt charged, heavy with everything they'd been carefully not acknowledging. Vivian, he said quietly. Yes? If this situation were different. If we'd met under normal circumstances. Would you? He didn't finish the question, but she understood it anyway. Would she have been interested? Would she have felt this pull toward him without the forced proximity and shared danger? The honest answer was yes. She would have noticed him anywhere. Would have been drawn to his intensity, his intelligence, the way he commanded space without arrogance. The circumstances had thrown them together, but what she felt wasn't just circumstantial. I think I would, she said softly. Would you? He moved closer, closing the distance between them on the couch until she could feel his warmth. I think I started falling for you the first night, when you stood in that parking lot surrounded by men trying to intimidate you and refused to show fear. You were terrified, I could see it, but you didn't break. I'd never seen anyone that strong. His hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that felt unbearably tender. And then I got to know you. Your brilliance, your dedication, the way you care about your work because it helps people. How much you love your grandmother. The way you process information, question everything, refuse to be told what to think. You're extraordinary, Vivian. No one had ever looked at her the way Dante was looking at her now. Like she was something precious and powerful at once. Like he saw all of her, the scared parts and the strong parts, and wanted them equally. I don't know if this is real, she admitted. or if it's just adrenaline and proximity and trauma bonding. Does it feel like just that to you? No, it feels like more. Then maybe it is more. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, time to think better of this. Vivian didn't pull away. She closed the distance between them, and when his lips met hers, it felt like something clicking into place. The kiss started gentle, almost questioning. Then Vivian's hands came up to his shoulders and his arms wrapped around her waist, and gentle became urgent. All the tension of the past weeks, all the careful restraint, dissolved. His mouth moved against hers with focused intensity, like kissing her was something he'd been thinking about for days. Weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Tell me to stop. Why would I do that? Because once we do this, everything changes. And I need you to be sure. Vivian pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm sure. Are you? I've been sure since the moment I met you. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands sliding into her hair. Vivian lost track of thoughts, of consequences, of everything except the feeling of being wanted like this. Dante's touch was careful despite the passion, checking in with every escalation, making sure she was with him. They moved to his bedroom in a haze of kisses and shed clothing, each layer removed with deliberate care. When Vivian hesitated, suddenly aware that this was real, happening, Dante paused immediately. We can stop, he said. Anytime. Just say the word. But she didn't want to stop. Wanted this, wanted him, with a certainty that surprised her. I don't want to stop. Neither do I. His hands framed her face again, that gesture she was coming to love. But your comfort matters more than anything else. You understand that? She nodded, throat tight with emotion. The care he showed, the way he prioritized her experience, made her feel safe in a way that had nothing to do with bodyguards or security systems. What followed was tender and intense, Dante's gentleness somehow making everything more powerful. He took his time, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch. When they finally came together, it felt less like simple physical intimacy and more like something deeper, a claiming that went both directions. Afterward, lying tangled in his sheets with his arms around her, Vivian felt the vulnerability of what they'd just done settle over her. This wasn't just about attraction anymore. This was real emotion, real connection, and that made it terrifying. Dante's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. What are you thinking? That this complicates everything. He laughed quietly. It absolutely does. Are you worried? Terrified, he admitted. I don't do this, Vivian. I don't get attached. It's a liability in my world. But with you, I can't seem to help it. You've gotten under my skin. Made me want things I thought I'd given up on. She turned to face him, studying his expression in the dim light. Like what? Like partnership. Like someone who knows what I really do and doesn't flinch. Like waking up next to someone who makes me want to be better than I am. The honesty in his words made her chest ache. I'm scared, she admitted. This started because I needed protection. What if when the danger's gone, this goes away too? Do you think that's what this is? Just a response to circumstances? I don't know. How can we know? Dante's hand cupped her cheek. We can't. Not for certain. But I know what I feel isn't about the situation. It's about you. Who you are. How you make me feel. And that's not going to change when the Kozlovs are gone. Vivian wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that this connection was real and lasting. But fear whispered that she was being naive, that she was confusing safety with love. As if reading her thoughts, Dante pressed a kiss to her forehead. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. We just have to be honest about what we're feeling right now. Can you do that? Yes. Then right now, I'm falling for you. Maybe already fallen. And that terrifies me, but I'm not going to fight it. Right now, Vivian said softly, I think I'm falling too. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. The vulnerability of what they'd admitted hanging in the air like a promise neither was quite ready to examine too closely. Morning came with sunlight streaming through windows and the disorienting awareness of waking in Dante's bed. Vivian felt his arm draped across her waist, the warmth of his body against her back. For a moment, she let herself enjoy it without overthinking. Then he stirred, pulling her closer, his lips finding the curve of her neck. Good morning. Morning, she managed, hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. They made breakfast together, a new kind of intimacy in the casual domesticity. Dante's kitchen, which had felt like his space before, now felt shared. They moved around each other easily, handing off coffee and utensils without speaking, comfortable in a way that usually took months to develop. They were finishing eggs when Nico appeared in the doorway, carefully keeping his expression neutral. "We've got new intel. Tracked the Kozlov pharmaceutical operation to a warehouse district. Looks like that's where they're manufacturing the knockoffs." Dante's demeanor shifted immediately, the tender morning version of him replaced by the dangerous strategist. "Show me." They spent the afternoon planning. The warehouse was well guarded, cameras everywhere, rotating security shifts. A direct assault would be costly and risky. They needed strategy. Vivian studied the building schematics, her pharmaceutical knowledge intersecting with what she was seeing. If they're manufacturing there, they need specialized equipment. Climate control for storage, ventilation systems for the chemicals. "Look here." She pointed to a section of the building. "That's got to be the synthesis lab. It's the only space with the right infrastructure." Dante leaned over her shoulder, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "If we can get to the lab, we can document everything. Evidence for the authorities. And shut down their operation permanently." Planning continued into evening. By the time they'd worked out approach vectors and contingencies, Vivian felt the weight of what was coming. This wasn't abstract anymore. Dante and his team were going to confront the Kozlovs directly, and people could get hurt. "I want to come with you," she said. Dante's response was immediate. "No, I know that building type. Know what to look for to prove they're manufacturing illegal pharmaceuticals. You need me there. I need you safe." His tone left no room for argument. "This is the dangerous part, Vivian. This is where people like me handle things, so people like you don't have to." The division felt wrong somehow, like he was drawing a line between them. But she understood it too. He was trying to protect her. That's what he did. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. We hit them fast, document everything, and disappear before they can organize a response. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours until this was over. Until she was safe. Until the reason for her forced proximity to Dante evaporated." The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it brought a different kind of fear. What happened after? When she didn't need his protection anymore? When this temporary arrangement ended? She looked at Dante, saw him already mentally preparing for the confrontation, and wondered if they'd survive what came after the danger even better than they'd survived the danger itself. The morning of the raid, Dante was different. Focused in a way that made Vivian understand exactly what he was in his world. Not the man who cooked her breakfast or held her through the night, but someone capable of calculated violence. It should have frightened her. Instead, she found it reassuring. He would do what needed to be done. She watched him prepare with methodical precision, checking weapons she hadn't known he kept in the penthouse, reviewing building schematics one final time, speaking in low tones with Nico and the rest of his team. The operation would begin at 11 p.m., using darkness as cover. "You stay here," Dante told her for the 10th time. 2 guards on the door. "Don't open it for anyone except me or Nico. Understand?" "I understand," Vivian said. "Be careful." He kissed her then, hard and possessive, like he was marking her as his. "When I get back, we're having a serious conversation about what happens next. About us. Promise." The penthouse felt enormous and empty after they left. Vivian tried to work, to review research files, to do anything productive. But her mind kept circling back to Dante walking into danger. The Kozlovs wouldn't surrender peacefully. People could die tonight. He could die? Her phone rang at 9:30. Unknown number. Vivian almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Dr. Laurent." The voice was accented, Russian, coldly amused. "I hope you're having a pleasant evening." Her blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "Someone who's grown tired of your interference. Your protector thinks he's very clever, planning his little raid. But he's forgotten that we can play this game too. What do you want?" The voice continued like she hadn't spoken. "Your grandmother, Marguerite Laurent, 78 years old, residing at Sunset Gardens Assisted Living. Such a lovely facility. Very peaceful. It would be a shame if something happened to disrupt that peace." Vivian couldn't breathe. "Leave her alone. She has nothing to do with this." "But she does. She's your weakness. Just like you're becoming Moretti's weakness. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to bring us the synthesis protocols for compound S-147. Complete files, nothing held back. You're going to come alone to the address I'm about to send you. You have 1 hour. And if I don't, Then your grandmother has a very unfortunate accident. Falls happen in nursing homes. Medication errors. Tragic, but these things occur. The threat was delivered with casual cruelty, and Vivian knew without doubt they'd do exactly what they promised. The Kozlovs had already destroyed lives. One elderly woman with dementia meant nothing to them. How do I know she's safe right now? Her phone buzzed with an incoming photo. Her grandmother, sitting in her familiar chair in her room at Sunset Gardens, unaware she was being photographed. The image was time-stamped 15 minutes ago. 1 hour, Dr. Laurent. Come alone, or she dies. Try to contact Moretti, and she dies. Cooperate, and you both walk away. The call ended. A text arrived with an address, some kind of medical facility on the outskirts of the city. Vivian stared at her phone, mind racing through impossible options. If she called Dante, they'd know. They had to be watching her somehow, monitoring communications. If she didn't go, her grandmother would die. The woman who'd sacrificed everything for her, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give Vivian opportunities, who even now smiled with confused joy when she visited. There was no choice. There had never been a choice. Vivian opened her laptop, accessed the encrypted files containing her research, downloaded everything to a drive with hands that barely shook. She'd spent 3 years developing compound S-147. It represented breakthrough antimicrobial treatment, potentially saving thousands of lives. Giving it to the Kozlovs meant contaminated versions would flood the black market, might kill people. But her grandmother was real, was sitting in her room right now, unaware of danger, trusting that Vivian would keep her safe. She found paper and pen, wrote quickly. The guards outside wouldn't let her leave without explanation, but she could slip past if she was clever. There was a service entrance Dante had shown her, mentioned it led to the building's maintenance areas. She could make it to the parking garage, take her car. The note was brief. Dante, they have my grandmother. Threatened to kill her unless I bring them my research. I can't let her die because of me. I'm sorry. I love you. Please understand. Vivian. She left it on the kitchen counter where he'd find it. Grabbed her bag and the research drive. The service entrance was exactly where he'd indicated, and the stairwell beyond was empty. Her heart hammered as she descended, expecting discovery at every turn. But she made it to the garage, to her car, without anyone stopping her. The guards were focused on the main entrance. They wouldn't realize she was gone until it was too late. Vivian drove through empty streets, following GPS directions to the address. An abandoned medical clinic, windows dark, parking lot cracked and overgrown. The perfect place for something terrible to happen far from witnesses. She almost called Dante anyway. Almost trusted that he'd find a way to save both her and her grandmother. But the memory of that voice, the casual certainty of violence, stopped her. These people had no hesitation about killing. She couldn't gamble with her grandmother's life. The clinic's front door was unlocked. Vivian pushed it open, stepping into darkness that smelled of mildew and decay. Somewhere ahead, light spilled from a doorway. Come in, Dr. Laurent, a voice called. Don't be shy. She followed the light to what had once been an examination room. 3 men waited there. 2 she didn't recognize, large and dangerous looking. The third made her stomach drop. Dr. Harlow stood beside an examination table, looking perfectly at ease. He smiled when he saw her, the same professional expression he'd worn during her appointment. The appointment that had started this nightmare. Hello, Vivian. I hope you didn't have too much trouble finding us. Where's my grandmother? Is she safe? Safe as houses. For now. Did you bring what we asked for? Vivian held up the drive. Everything's here. All my research on compound S-147. Let my grandmother go, and it's yours. Dr. Harlow took the drive, plugged it into a laptop sitting on a rusted medical cabinet. His fingers flew across the keyboard, checking files. After a moment, he nodded to the other men. It's authentic. Now release my grandmother. His smile widened. I'm afraid that's not quite how this works. You see, you've caused us considerable trouble. Moretti's interest in our operation, the attention you've drawn. We can't simply let you walk away knowing what you know. Terror spiked through her. You said if I cooperated, we'd both be safe. I lied. The admission came with casual amusement. We're not in the business of leaving loose ends, Dr. Laurent. Your grandmother will be fine. We have no interest in killing elderly women. But you, unfortunately, know too much. This is where your story ends. One of the men moved toward her, and Vivian backed up instinctively. This couldn't be happening. She'd done everything they asked, had sacrificed her research, her integrity, everything. The man grabbed her arm, and Vivian fought with desperate strength born of pure survival instinct. She kicked, scratched, bit anything to break free. But he was trained, professional, and within seconds had her restrained against the examination table. Dr. Harlow approached with a syringe. Don't worry. You won't feel much. A peaceful way to go, really. They'll find you here in a few days. Tragic overdose. You were so stressed about the blackmail, the violation of your privacy. No one will question it. The syringe came closer to her arm, and Vivian screamed. Not for help because there was no one coming, but from pure rage at the injustice of it. She tried to do everything right. Had tried to save her grandmother, to protect her research, to be good. And this was how it ended. Then the door behind them exploded inward. Dante moved through it like an avenging angel, Nico and two others flanking him. The room erupted into controlled chaos. The man holding Vivian released her to face this new threat and immediately went down from Nico's precise strike. The second guard pulled a gun, but never got a shot off. Dr. Harlow grabbed Vivian, dragging her in front of him as a shield, the syringe pressed against her throat. Don't move, Moretti, or she gets this in the jugular. Dante stopped, but his eyes were murderous. His gaze flicked to Vivian, checking her for injuries, then locked on Dr. Harlow with deadly focus. Let her go. This is between you and me. No, this is about business. About you interfering where you don't belong. She's my insurance out of here. You're not leaving. The certainty in Dante's voice was absolute. Dr. Harlow pressed the syringe harder against Vivian's skin, and she felt the sharp point begin to break through. Terror made everything slow down. She could feel her pulse throbbing against the needle. Could see Dante's barely controlled fury. Could smell Dr. Harlow's cologne, the same scent from that appointment. Then Vivian remembered something. A self-defense class, years ago. The instructor saying that hostages weren't helpless. That surprise was a weapon. She dropped her full weight suddenly, becoming dead weight in Dr. Harlow's grip. He stumbled, the syringe pulling away from her throat. In that instant, Dante moved. Vivian didn't see exactly what happened. She was on the floor, scrambling away. But she heard the impact, the choked cry. When she looked up, Dr. Harlow was on the ground, Dante standing over him with cold rage written across every line of his body. You put your hands on her, Dante said quietly, voice more terrifying for its lack of volume. You violated her, terrified her, tried to kill her. I should end you right now. Dr. Harlow was bleeding, cradling his arm at an unnatural angle. Please. I was just doing my job. Following orders. Following orders. Dante's laugh was bitter. You destroyed lives for money. How many women, Harlow? How many people did you photograph and blackmail? I don't know. 20. 30. It was just business. Just business. Dante crouched down, grabbed Dr. Harlow by his broken arm, making him scream. My mother died because people like you flooded the market with contaminated pharmaceuticals. Just business killed her. Just business is going to put you in prison for the rest of your life. He released him with disgust, turned to Nico. Make sure every piece of evidence is documented. I want this entire operation exposed. And get an ambulance for this piece of garbage. I want him alive to face what he's done. Then Dante was crossing to Vivian, pulling her into his arms with enough force to nearly knock the breath from her. She clung to him, shaking with delayed terror and relief. Your grandmother is safe, he said against her hair. Nico's team secured her the moment we realized you'd left. She's been protected this whole time. The words took a moment to process. Safe. Her grandmother was safe. How did you find me? She managed. Tracked your phone. Got your note, and nearly lost my mind. He pulled back enough to look at her, hands framing her face. Do you have any idea what it did to me, seeing that you'd gone to face them alone? I couldn't let them hurt her. She's all I have left of my family. You could have died. His voice cracked slightly. Vivian, you could have died, and I couldn't have done anything to stop it. But you did stop it. I'm okay. You're not okay. Neither am I. His forehead pressed against hers. I can't lose you. I can't. Do you understand that? The rawness in his voice, the vulnerability he was showing in front of his team, made her throat tight. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just couldn't see another choice. There's always another choice that includes telling me. Trusting me. We're partners, remember? even when it puts you at risk. Especially then. His hands tightened against her face. I love you, Vivian. I should have said it before. Should have made sure you knew that you're not alone in this. That I'd move heaven and earth to keep both you and your grandmother safe. The words settled over her like a benediction. I love you too. I wrote it in the note, but I should have told you. Should have trusted you. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped around each other while Nico efficiently documented the scene and called authorities. Eventually, they'd have to give statements, deal with the aftermath. But right now, Vivian just held on to Dante and let herself feel safe. The Kozlov operation was finished. Dr. Harlow was in custody, singing about his employers to reduce his sentence. The research drive had been recovered. Most importantly, every copy of her photos had been destroyed, verified by Dante's people who'd raided the Kozlov servers simultaneously with the warehouse operation. It was over. Really, finally over. Which meant the reason for Vivian staying in Dante's penthouse had evaporated. The question that had been hovering unspoken between them could no longer be avoided. What happened now? The police station interview took hours. Vivian gave her statement 3 times, answering the same questions with patient detail. Yes, Dr. Harlow had taken inappropriate photographs during a medical examination. Yes, she'd been blackmailed for pharmaceutical research. Yes, she'd been threatened, attacked, nearly killed. The detective assigned to her case was a sharp-eyed woman named Martinez who looked at Vivian with sympathy and steel in equal measure. You're incredibly brave, Dr. Laurent. Most victims don't survive what you went through. I had help, Vivian said, glancing at Dante across the room where he was giving his own statement. Detective Martinez followed her gaze. Mr. Moretti has been very cooperative. The evidence he provided is going to take down the entire Kozlov pharmaceutical operation. We've already made 17 arrests. That should have been the end of it. Justice served, case closed. But Vivian knew that Dante's cooperation came at a price he'd negotiated carefully. The police would get the Kozlovs and Dr. Harlow. In return, certain questions about Dante's business interests wouldn't be asked too closely. It was a compromise. Not perfect, but functional. The kind of gray area Vivian was learning to accept. They left the station as dawn broke over the city, exhaustion weighing on both of them. Dante drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Back at the penthouse, they collapsed onto his bed fully clothed and slept for 12 hours straight. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of follow-up interviews and legal proceedings. Dr. Harlow's medical license was permanently revoked. He faced charges in 4 states, with more jurisdictions joining as additional victims came forward. The Kozlov organization was dismantled piece by piece, their pharmaceutical counterfeiting operation exposed in detail. Vivian's research was returned to her, and Meridian Biotech CEO personally apologized for the security failures that had allowed Marcus to operate as an inside informant. Marcus himself was terminated and faced corporate espionage charges. The promotion Vivian had been working toward was approved unanimously. Everything she'd fought to protect was secure. Her career was not only intact, but enhanced. Her grandmother remained safe in her assisted living facility, blissfully unaware of how close danger had come. The photos that had been used to terrorize her were confirmed destroyed by 3 independent digital forensics teams. She'd won, survived, emerged victorious. So why did she feel hollow? Vivian stood in Dante's guest room, the room that had been hers for nearly a month, and packed her belongings into the same overnight bag she'd arrived with. She'd been staying here because of necessity, because of danger. That necessity no longer existed. It was time to go home. The thought made her chest ache. A knock on the doorframe made her turn. Dante leaned against it, watching her with an unreadable expression. He'd showered recently, his hair still damp, wearing the casual clothes she'd come to associate with their evenings together. You're packing, he observed. Yeah, I should get back to my apartment. Back to normal life. Normal life. He said it like the words tasted strange. Is that what you want? Vivian's hands stilled on the sweater she'd been folding. I don't know what I want anymore. Dante pushed off the doorframe, crossing to stand in front of her. His hands came up to rest on her shoulders, warm and steady. Then let me tell you what I want. Okay, I want you to stay. Not because you need protection, not because there's danger, but because I've gotten used to you being here. Because I make coffee in the morning and expect to find you in my kitchen. Because this place felt like just a space before you, and now it feels like home. The words settled over her, precious and terrifying. Dante, I can't just move in with you because we got close during a crisis. Why not? Because what if this only worked because of the circumstances? What if without the danger and the forced proximity, we realize we don't actually fit? His hands tightened on her shoulders. Do you really think that's what this is? I don't know. How can anyone know? Dante was quiet for a moment, those gray-green eyes searching her face. Then test it. Stay for another month. 2 months. However long you need to figure out if what we have is real or just adrenaline. I'm not going anywhere, Vivian. I meant it when I said I love you. Her throat felt tight. I love you too. That's not the question. Then what is the question? How do we make this work? Your world and mine. What you do and what I do. How do I reconcile being with someone who operates outside the law? Do you think I'm a bad person? The question was asked quietly, but she heard the vulnerability beneath it. Vivian reached up, covering his hands with hers. No, I think you're someone who does what's necessary in a world that's more complicated than I used to think. I think you have a code and you honor it. I think you care about people in your own way. But I spent my whole life being good, following rules, believing that was how you made the world better. And then the rules failed me. The system couldn't protect me. You could. So what are you afraid of? That I'm not brave enough to live in the gray areas with you. That eventually you'll need me to be okay with things I can't accept. That this beautiful thing we've built will crack under the weight of reality. Dante pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. I can't promise you it will be easy. My world is complicated and sometimes dangerous. But I can promise you honesty, respect, partnership in every decision. And I'll never ask you to compromise who you are. What if who I am isn't enough for who you are? You're everything I didn't know I needed. His lips brushed her temple. Stay, Vivian. Please. Let's figure this out together. She wanted to. God, she wanted to so badly it hurt. But fear held her frozen. I need to think, she said finally. Can you give me that? Time to think. He released her slowly, stepping back. Take all the time you need. But know that I'll be here, waiting, for as long as it takes. Vivian finished packing in silence, Dante watching from the doorway. When she was done, he walked her to the elevator, kissed her goodbye with heartbreaking tenderness, and let her go. The drive back to her apartment felt like traveling through a life that no longer fit. Everything looked the same. The streets, the buildings, her parking lot. But she was different, changed by everything that had happened. Her apartment felt small and empty. She stood in the doorway, looking at the space that had been hers for 3 years, and couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here anymore. Grace showed up an hour later, having gotten Vivian's text that she was finally home. Her friend took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. Tell me everything. They sat on Vivian's worn couch, and she told the whole story. The blackmail, the danger, Dante and his world. Falling in love with someone who shouldn't have made sense, but somehow did. Grace listened without interrupting until Vivian finally ran out of words. So you're in love with a criminal who saved your life and treats you like you're precious, Grace summarized. And you left because you're scared it won't work. That's the simplified version, yes. Viv. Grace took her hand, squeezing gently. You've spent your whole life playing it safe, following every rule, being perfect so you could honor your grandmother's sacrifice. And where did that get you? A successful career. And blackmailed, threatened, and nearly killed. The system you believed in failed you. This man, this dangerous man you're so worried about, he's the one who actually protected you. I know. So what are you really afraid of? That he's not good enough for you? Or that you're not brave enough for him? The question cut too close to truth. Vivian had always been brave in controlled ways. Brave about research, about career challenges, about things she could prepare for. But this required a different kind of courage. The courage to build a life in uncertain territory with someone who couldn't promise her safety in conventional ways. What would you do? Vivian asked. Grace smiled. I'd go back to the man who looks at me like I hung the moon and stop letting fear make my decisions. It took Vivian 3 days to work up the courage. 3 days of missing Dante like a physical ache, of recognizing that her apartment felt wrong because he wasn't in it, of realizing that brave didn't mean fearless. It meant being afraid and choosing to move forward anyway. She showed up at his penthouse unannounced, heart hammering. Used the key he'd given her that she hadn't returned. found him in the living room working on his laptop, and the expression on his face when he saw her made her breath catch. "Vivian, I've been thinking," she said, "about what you asked, about what I want. And I want to stay. I want mornings with you and late nights working side by side. I want to figure out how to navigate our different worlds together. I want to be brave enough to choose this even though it scares me." Dante crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified, but I'm sure." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and it felt like coming home. They built a life together incrementally, learning each other's rhythms and boundaries. Vivian kept her apartment initially, maintaining a safety net even as she spent every night at the penthouse. Dante respected that need without complaint, understanding she required time to adjust. 6 weeks later, she finally gave up the apartment lease. Meeting each other's families was inevitable. Dante's family situation was complex. His father had mostly recovered from the stroke, but was retired, leaving Dante fully in charge of their business operations. But there was Maria, the woman who'd helped raise him after his mother died, his father's longtime housekeeper who'd become family. Maria was a tiny Italian woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that saw everything. She took one look at Vivian and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Finally, he brings home a smart girl." Vivian had laughed, charmed despite her nervousness. The dinner that followed was warm and welcoming, Maria telling embarrassing stories about young Dante, while his father watched with quiet approval. When it was time for Dante to meet her grandmother, Vivian was more nervous. Marguerite's dementia meant some days she was sharp and present, other days lost in confusion. Vivian never knew which version would greet them. They lucked out. Her grandmother was having a good day, sitting in the garden at Sunset Gardens with clear eyes. She looked up as they approached, and a smile lit her weathered face. "Vivi, and who's this handsome young man?" "Grandma, this is Dante. He's—" Vivian hesitated, not sure how to explain. "He's very important to me." Marguerite studied Dante with the shrewd assessment she'd honed over 7 decades. "He looks at you like you hung the moon, child. Don't let him go." "I won't, Grandma." They visited every week after that, sometimes finding her grandmother lost in the past, sometimes present and sharp. Dante was patient either way, never frustrated when she forgot who he was or called him by someone else's name. "You're good with her," Vivian told him one evening after a difficult visit. "She's important to you. That makes her important to me." The words were simple but profound. He'd integrated himself into every part of her life, made space for what mattered to her, asked nothing except that she do the same for him. Vivian's career continued to flourish. Compound S-147 moved into human trials with promising results. She was promoted to senior researcher, began mentoring younger scientists, published papers that expanded her field's understanding of antimicrobial resistance. But she also became involved in Dante's work in unexpected ways. She consulted on pharmaceutical security, helping him identify and shut down other counterfeiting operations. Used her expertise to ensure medications flowing through his legitimate supply chains were properly sourced and authentic. Found purpose in protecting others the way he'd protected her. The gray areas became less frightening. She learned to live with moral complexity, to accept that good and bad weren't always clearly delineated. Dante kept his word about partnership and respect, never asking her to compromise her core values, always seeking her input on decisions that affected them both. 6 months after the night she'd nearly died in that abandoned clinic, Vivian had a routine doctor's appointment. Annual checkup, nothing serious. But the memory of Dr. Harlow, a violation and vulnerability, made her anxious. Dante insisted on coming with her. The new doctor was a woman named Dr. Chun, mid-40s with kind eyes and impeccable credentials Dante had personally verified. Her office was professional and warm, every protocol visible and explained. "I'll need to take a few photos for your medical records," Dr. Chin said partway through the examination. "Standard documentation. Would you like to review our privacy policy first?" The question, the transparency, made Vivian's throat tight. "Yes, please." Dr. Chin walked her through every procedure, explained exactly what would be documented and why, showed her the secure system where records were stored. When the photos were taken, they were medical and appropriate, exactly what they should be. Leaving the appointment, Dante took her hand. "How do you feel?" "Good. Better than good, I think." She paused, searching for words. I think I'm healing. Really healing. You're the strongest person I know. They walked to his car in comfortable silence. Vivian was sliding into the passenger seat when Dante stopped her, hand gentle on her arm. Wait, there's something I need to do. He reached into his jacket pocket, and Vivian's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. I've been carrying this for weeks, Dante said, waiting for the right moment. But I realize there's no perfect moment. There's just now, and how much I love you, and how certain I am that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was elegant and simple, a single diamond that caught the light. It was perfect, not ostentatious, not trying too hard, just beautiful. Vivian Laurent, will you marry me? Her eyes filled with tears. She thought about everything that had led to this moment, the violation that had brought them together, the terror and danger, the slow building of trust, learning to be brave in new ways, finding love in the most unexpected place. Yes, she said. Yes, absolutely yes. Dante's smile was incandescent. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close for a kiss that tasted like joy and promise, and a future she'd never imagined but now couldn't live without. You've made me so happy, he murmured against her lips. You saved me. In every way a person can be saved. No, we saved each other. The wedding took place a year after that first terrifying email. They chose a venue that reflected both their worlds, elegant but not pretentious, intimate but meaningful. Vivian's pharmaceutical colleagues mixed with Dante's business associates, two communities that shouldn't have intersected but somehow did, united by genuine affection for the couple. Grace was Vivian's maid of honor, emotional through the entire ceremony. Nico stood as Dante's best man, looking uncomfortable and formal, but proud of his friend. Her grandmother attended, wheeled into the ceremony by a nurse from Sunset Gardens. Marguerite was having a clear day, thank God, and when Vivian walked down the aisle in her simple white dress, her grandmother's face glowed with joy. Maria dabbed at her eyes throughout the ceremony, whispering to anyone who'd listen about how she'd known from the first moment that Dante had found his match. The vows were traditional, but felt radical given how they'd found each other. Vivian promised to love and honor and cherish this man who'd shown her what real protection looked like. Dante promised the same, adding quietly that she'd taught him what it meant to be vulnerable, to trust, to hope. When they kissed as husband and wife, the gathered crowd erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was perfect. Toasts that made everyone laugh and cry. Dancing that lasted until midnight. Vivian in Dante's arms, swaying to music while he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. At one point, she caught sight of her grandmother watching them, and the old woman smiled. Marguerite might not remember this tomorrow, might forget Dante's name or why they were celebrating. But right now, she knew her granddaughter was happy, loved, safe. That was enough. Later, during a quiet moment when they'd stepped outside for air, Dante pulled Vivian close. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about that first email. How terrified I was. How violated I felt. She looked up at him. And how that awful thing led me to you. I'm not glad it happened. But I'm glad we found each other. Some violations lead to unexpected wholeness, Dante said quietly. You took something meant to destroy you and transformed it into strength. Into us. We did it together. Together. I like the sound of that. They returned to the reception, to the celebration of their beginning. Vivian danced with her grandmother, slowly and carefully. Dante danced with Maria, making the older woman laugh with delight. Friends and family surrounded them with love and support. As the evening wound down, Vivian found herself standing with Grace, watching Dante across the room as he spoke with Nico. So, Grace said with a knowing smile, was it worth the risk? Every single second. You know, when you first told me about him, I thought you were insane. Falling for someone you met while being blackmailed by criminals. I was a little insane, Vivian admitted. But sometimes insane is what brave looks like. Grace hugged her tightly. I'm so happy for you, Viv. You deserved someone who sees how extraordinary you are. We both got lucky. Dante caught her eye from across the room, and the smile he gave her made her heart skip. He excused himself from his conversation and crossed to her, offering his hand. One more dance, Mrs. Moretti? Mrs. Moretti. She'd never get tired of hearing that. They moved onto the dance floor, and Vivian rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, strong, real. This was her life now, built from trauma into triumph, from violation into vindication, from fear into love. She'd trusted a dangerous man to protect her, and he'd given her everything. Safety, partnership, a future that honored both who she'd been and who she was becoming. Would you trust a dangerous man to protect you? Vivian thought about all the people who might hear their story someday. What did you think of Vivian and Dante's journey? Let me know below, and subscribe for more stories of finding love in unexpected places. As they swayed together, Vivian thought about Dr. Harlow in prison, about the Kozlov organization dismantled, about her research saving lives the way it was meant to, about her grandmother safe and cared for, about the career she'd nearly lost but had ultimately protected. Most of all, she thought about the man holding her, the one who'd appeared in her darkest moment and shown her that sometimes salvation came from unexpected sources. That protection could be fierce and gentle at once. That love could grow even in the most damaged soil. Some records were meant to be kept forever, and this one, their story written in shared survival and hard-won trust, was hers to treasure. Their first dance as husband and wife ended, but the music continued. Friends and family surrounded them, celebrating not just a wedding but a victory over fear and violation and darkness. Vivian looked up at Dante, saw her entire future reflected in his eyes, and knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was trust. Trust yourself. Trust your heart. Trust that a dangerous man with gentle hands could keep you safe while helping you find your own strength. She'd found all of that and more, and she'd never let it go.